Peace, peace, peace. I'm here again, giving you the true information about who you are as the true English nationals who consisted of Anglo-Saxon tribes. And as we just proved here, based off the history, that they were descendants of God, not like the descendants who were Roman and of French descent, as we just proved here. Because it says here, unlike the Anglo-Saxon world genealogies, the Merovingians never claimed descent from God, nor is there evidence that they were regarded as sacred. Okay? So now that we have proven that the English church, who was under the authority of the Kingdom of England, who consists of Anglo-Saxon tribes who were actually Berbers, that this is who we are. Because Noble Ali said that you are descendants of kings and queens. He also said don't throw away your slave name, for the Europeans are going to have to pay bound and compound interest for what they did to our descendants in the time of slavery. Okay? So now we understand that from Queen Elizabeth II, who ruling up to this day, who were descendants down from King George I of the Roman Empire in 1714, when it passed from Queen Anne, who was ruling the British Empire by way of a treaty. And now we understand that King George I of the Roman Empire was under the authority of Clovis I, down from the Roman Empire, which goes all the way back to the Merovingian dynasty, who, according to the record, says that they were not descended from gods like the Anglo-Saxon descent. Okay? So now let's get into a little chart to prove this. Because, I'm giving you this information, but it's out of sync with you guys, brothers and sisters' minds. So, it's Wikipedia's baby food for you. And most of the babies can comprehend pictures better than they do words. So give me 1 second. Okay. I'm going to give you a little history that they wrote. Because what they say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Okay. This is what they call a white ship. A white ship. This ship represents freedom. This is what Frederick Douglass makes reference to when he used to stand on the ports. These ships represented freedom. Now, in 1135, the white ship sank. This particular era was identified as the anarchy, which I told you in my last lesson, our first lesson. And according to the Berber calendar, or AD in the year of our Lord, Annos Dinas, however you pronounce it, means the year of our Lord. This is where the record were kept, according to so-called Jesus. Because we just mentioned that in the last video, that the fleur-de-lis in the Middle Ages was in reference to Jesus. Okay? So now, let's get a history of the Anglo-Saxons who were ruling the Kingdom of England prior to his invasion by the Norman French, i.e., Germans. Okay. Let's close this out. Here you see a picture of William the Conqueror. You see this? National Portrait and Gallery History of the Kings and Queens of England by David Williamson. I suggest you order this book. I got it from a thrift shop for $2.99. But this is where the treasures are hid, because we throw them away because we don't understand this history. So we just throw them in the trash. But this is what we should not do, because this is where the information lies. Okay, so this is William the Conqueror. Close this out. I'm not going to use that mouse. I'm going to use my finger. So you see William the Conqueror just a second ago. All right? He's on the front cover of the book. Oh, I don't want to go there. Where did it go? I'm sorry. Okay, let's go back there. All right, let me blow it up. Yellow light. Okay, you see that? A little bit more. I hate this mouse. It says content. This is the next page. This is what the book is contained with. You see it says content, introduction, BC to AD 871. This speaks 1,000 words, brothers and sisters. Because 871 goes to the entire era of Alfred the Great. And Alfred the Great name means wise elf. But you notice it don't have a date for BC. It just has a date for AD 871. And the word the word AD means Annus Dominus, or however you pronounce that word, means in the year of our Lord. What Lord they talking about? This is what we're going to find out. Because the word BC don't mean before Christianity, because Berbers were Christians. BC means Berber calendar, because the only calendar that existed prior to the Gregorian calendar was the Berber calendar, because the Gregorian calendar was created in 1582. So how could there be a before Christian era when the calendar where the only story calendar to support that story wasn't created until 1582? But yet they start with the AD in the year of our Lord. Shouldn't the Lord exist in BC? He should exist in AD. And so if the Lord existed in BC, and there was no Christianity back then, there were Berbers. The so-called Lord was a Berber, because they didn't switch from BC to AD until the year 951. Look it up. 1 BC to 1 AD. In the Berber calendar, it is the year 950 or the year to the year 951. Isn't that a little strange? Okay. Here it says, the next one, you see Anglo-Saxon and the Danes. The next one is the Normans. Give me 1 second, my brothers and sisters. I got to make 1-1. That'll be a second. Okay, I'm back. All right, so next you see the Normans, then the Angevins, then the Plantagenets, the House of Lancasters, the House of York, the Tudors, the Stuarts, the House of Hanover, the House of Saxon, Coburg, and Gotha, the House of Windsor, and that's it. Okay? So why did the book stop at that? Because the House of Windsor is the house that's ruling now, Queen Elizabeth II. Her great-grandmother was Queen Victoria. All right? You get into King George V. House of Hanover was started by King George I. House of Stuart was started by King James and ended with Queen Anne in 1714. The Tudors and the House of York and the House of the House of Lancasters, this was the house dealing with the what they call the War of the Roses. You get into so-called House of Lancasters, you get into the history of what they call the so-called passport, birth certificate, and the Social Security number. Back then, in 1667, it was called a settlement certificate. Because in the 14th century, King Henry the Eighth destroyed all the churches and monasteries because of this war that was going on by the invading cadets, House of Lancaster and the House of York, who were all part of the House of Plantagen, which was ruled by Godfrey V, Count of Anjou. They were ruling Jerusalem at this particular time. Okay? Anglo-Saxons and the Danes ended in the year 1035 AD. 1035 AD, and the Berber calendar is actually the year 9596 BC, and the Gregorian calendar, which we know that story didn't exist because the calendar didn't exist till 1582. But the story to support John, who received on the island of Patmos, received the book of Revelations concerning the so-called Jews. But if you look at the so-called 95, 96 BC, there is no English king. Then the only English king you get is William the Conqueror in the year 1066. So prior to that, you have the Anglo-Saxon, the Gregorian calendar, but there is no English king. So the only calendar that is used is the Berber calendar, and you see Anglo-Saxon kings ruling at that particular time. Now you have the Normans. This is 1066. All right? So let's close this out. Okay. If you look at this king, I'm sorry, brothers and sisters, hold on for one more second. Yeah, I took it. Yeah, I took it, Lee. Remember I said, when we first open up the pictures, pay close attention to this, my brothers and sisters. I'm going to go back for you, just to show you. I'm sorry, brothers. Excuse me. I apologize. Okay. You see here? Let me blow it up a little bit more so you can see it. No excuses. You see that? Introduction BC to AD 871. 871 is where Alfred the Great existed. But BC is where they switched from AD to BC to AD in the year 951. So all the way until Alfred the Great story is kind of sketchy. Why? Because BC, they didn't switch to BC to AD until the year 951. So how could there be 871 if they didn't switch to BC to AD until the year 951 AD? So that means this is not even true, dealing with the story of Alfred the Great. Because the story dealing with the Anglo-Saxons starts with Alfred the Great and the Danes. So Alfred the Great might have been a Dane. We're going to prove this. So now let's go back to this picture, because the first king of the Anglo-Saxons who were actually crowned with the crown is this king.